Welcome to the chaos sector. We return to the matrix. We want to take some time to review things in this case. We're going back to the vehicle spotted by the gas station surveillance. Yep, it was the first vehicle identified and reported on, matched the original time of death reported, yet it was gradually swept under the rug. In fact, if you notice, most aren't even talking about that vehicle anymore. But if you think about it, most believe that the deaths occurred within the 3 a.m. hour, right? So a vehicle spotted speeding down White Avenue at 3:45 a.m. should be the center of attention. Yet law enforcement ruled the vehicle out, and I guess it made the public do the same, I see. As we pointed out in the previous episode, the vehicle matches the alleged path of suspect vehicle 1. But of course, they left out the entire path the vehicle traveled because, well, it would end up being the same vehicle spotted on White Avenue. So they gave certain streets that are in the vicinity of the neighborhood to justify the narrative it was the alleged suspect's vehicle. This is very important, and I think many may need to take some time to go back to the vehicle on White Avenue. It is reported that suspect vehicle 1 was seen on Ridge Road, Indian Hills Drive, and Steiner Avenue. Now, in our analysis, these three routes would be the same routes the vehicle spotted on White Avenue took. Mind you, it's traveling westbound from the intersection White Avenue and Blaine Street. Blaine Street intersects with Indian Hills Drive, and Indian Hills Drive intersects with Steiner Avenue. The vehicle was allegedly traveling westbound on the 700th block of Indian Hills Drive around 3:26 a.m. Well, if it's traveling westbound on Indian Hills Drive, where exactly is it coming from? Let's make sure everyone is on the same page here, because I believe they simply reversed the path of the vehicle heading to the neighborhood around this time, when in reality, it's actually leaving the neighborhood in this time frame. Quote, suspect vehicle 1 was observed traveling westbound in the 700 block of Indian Hills Drive at approximately 3:26 a.m. and westbound on Steiner Avenue at Idaho State Highway 95 at 3:28 a.m., unquote. Now this path is coming from the east, yet where is the vehicle actually coming from if we scan the eastern region? How about we do this? Okay, so if the alleged Koberger didn't arrive in Moscow through the northern region of the state line then it would have to be the southern region, right? Keep in mind, there hasn't been a report of Koberger's vehicle being spotted entering, I repeat, entering Moscow by any traffic camera. All of the surveillance is during the vehicle's travel within the neighborhood or vicinity, and then alleged to be spotted on a highway traffic camera leaving the state. Yet the vehicle was apparently never spotted entering the state? That's odd. Now, if we keep traveling eastbound on Indian Hills Drive, we get to the 800th block, 900th block, and then we reach an intersection of the 900th block on Indian Hills Drive and South Blaine Street. Again, if the suspect vehicle 1 is traveling westbound on Indian Hills Drive, it has to be coming from this area. We have to keep pointing that out because it may determine if the suspect vehicle 1 is actually the vehicle spotted by the gas station surveillance. Now let's fill in the blank of the path law enforcement is alluding to Koberger taking. We presented it in the previous episode. So Koberger leaving Pullman would travel southbound on US 195, cross state lines onto Highway 95, then make a right on Southview Avenue, then a left onto Alice Street, then another left onto Indian Hills Drive, then another left onto Steiner Avenue, then another left onto Taylor Avenue, then finally reach the neighborhood. Now the time is not really the issue here. There's another issue. Well, for one, this is not the path law enforcement claimed he took arriving in Moscow. Again, they never gave an official route he took upon arrival. You see? So where was the vehicle traveling from arriving in Moscow? We need that path. Otherwise, how are you actually tracking the suspect's vehicle? You can't start off tracking the vehicle already traveling in Moscow and then claim it was spotted leaving by several traffic cameras. You're not connecting the vehicle to any previous location tracked upon arrival. It would be different if there was a report that claimed the vehicle was spotted entering Moscow at 3:15 a.m. by one of the state highway traffic cameras, you see? Then everything else being claimed would make sense for the sake of the investigation, but there is no arrival path confirmed. Now, if the vehicle traveled northbound on Highway 95, heading to Indian Hills Drive, then there is an intersection of Highway 95 and Palouse River Drive as seen here. As we all know, there is a traffic camera right here. So where is the vehicle? Again, for the vehicle to be traveling westbound on Indian Hills Drive, it has to be traveling from the east. Where would this be? If we continue down Highway 95, we reached a street which would lead you to Indian Hills Drive, heading east. This street is Southview Avenue. We already pointed this out. Now we're displaying the street side view of the likely path. Again, if suspect vehicle 1 is traveling westbound from the north, then the vehicle would be traveling on Highway 8, then Blaine Street, then Indian Hills Drive. This path would be entering Moscow from Highway 270, which is, of course, the northern path crossing state lines. No mention of the vehicle entering here. As you see, we're traveling eastbound until we reach Alice Street, which intersects with Indian Hills Drive. Mind you, the other route to Indian Hills Drive would be traveling from the intersection Indian Hills and South Blaine Street. And you all know where that path is likely associated with. But let's keep going here. Okay, so we're traveling down Alice Street. Now stop. Yep, there's a stop sign. As you see, here is the intersection of Alice Street and Indian Hills. Traveling westbound on Indian Hills, we reach the 700th block. We examined the area, looking for the camera that spotted the vehicle. And what we spotted, which was very inconspicuous, was a streetlight. This streetlight actually has a camera nested on the pole. Yeah, very discreet. This would be the camera that spotted the suspect's vehicle driving by. Now let's go back to the map and examine the PCA once more.
Hold on, before we continue. Let's make sure we're clear about the path law enforcement suggests Koberger took. In the PCA, it provides the same path that we suggested, yet it says, quote, "This is a possible route based off cellular device location," unquote. It doesn't confirm this is the path, it is a possibility. The problem is if there is surveillance footage, especially from state lines via the traffic camera, wouldn't they know that this was the path? If there have been several snapshots from surveillance cameras, where is the snapshot from the traffic cameras? We haven't seen any from intersections. We haven't seen any from the highway neither. So if law enforcement is stating it's possible, the vehicle traveled this route, then we have to suggest there is no evidence the vehicle was spotted traveling northbound on Highway 95 after crossing state lines. And without that proof, how do you prove the vehicle even entered Moscow? That's the point my colleague was proving. You can't start off with focusing on the vehicle traveling within Moscow if it's the alleged Koberger's vehicle. Traveling westbound on Indian Hills Drive, it is obviously traveling from the east. But where exactly would that be? Based on the projected path, it would have to take the same route we provided, based on traveling westbound on Indian Hills. The vehicle would turn on Southview Avenue onto Alice Street, then onto Indian Hills. That is the only route it could take, to end up traveling westbound on Indian Hills, you see? Yet no surveillance footage shows this path prior to Indian Hills. Let's make it easier. Does anyone recall one of our episodes addressing this very issue? We pointed out that there were tons of traffic cameras which would have spotted Koberger's vehicle, even if he avoided most of them by taking an alternate route. He would have to cross state lines, and this requires him to travel on a highway that definitely has traffic cameras at certain points. Now this would be the path from the northern region state line. Apparently this is not the path taken, right? They gave a projected path that has Koberger traveling southbound in Pullman on US 195, then crossing state lines onto Highway 95 in Moscow. If law enforcement is suggesting Koberger took the southern region crossing state lines, the same concept applies. So I ask the question once more. Where is the footage of the vehicle traveling north on Highway 95 after crossing state lines? There has to be footage, and that would have been released also in the exhibit. Traveling northbound on Highway 95, there is a traffic camera on Palouse River Drive, as seen here. Now, if the vehicle entered Moscow from this highway, surely law enforcement was eager to spot it on this traffic camera. Yet in the PCA, there is no indication that any evidence exists from this particular camera, which would be the first camera that spots the alleged Koberger traveling to the victim's home. Also, you see the shape near Southview Avenue. Oh, let me be a bit more specific. How about now? Do you see it now? Wait, let's just get a bit closer. Well, what do we have here? Moscow Police Department. Interesting, don't you think? Located on Southview Avenue, which would be the path that the suspect's vehicle had to have traveled to reach Indian Hills traveling westbound. Seems a bit coincidental. Now it was being built in October 2021, yet we would have to dig to find out if it was up and running in October of 2022, about a month prior to the murders. What if it was in operation by October of 2022? In the vicinity, the alleged Koberger would be surrounded by police departments, right? You have the south location, which takes about 3 minutes to arrive in the neighborhood. Then you have the north location, which takes about 5 minutes to arrive in the neighborhood. There's something with the department on Southview Avenue. I mean, look at the alleged path of the suspect's vehicle. They don't provide its previous location from Indian Hills Drive. If the vehicle is heading to the neighborhood at this time, which was 3:26 a.m., Where is the vehicle coming from prior to be spotted by that camera on Indian Hills Drive? Honestly, we have to keep reiterating this point. If it's traveling westbound on Indian Hills Drive, then there are only two directions it physically can take. Either it turned onto Southview Avenue, then reaches Indian Hills, or it came from the north, which would contradict the projected path law enforcement claim the vehicle traveled. A mystery what's new in this case. I think it's evident to why there isn't a previous location of the vehicle being spotted, traveling from the east, because it makes things very interesting.
Now I find it quite strange that in the PCA, there is an hour gap of any evidence the vehicle was spotted after leaving the neighborhood around 4:20 a.m. As you see here, from 4:20 a.m. to 5:26 a.m., the vehicle apparently disappeared. Quote, 4:21 a.m., headlights are seen traveling south on Walenta Drive behind 1119 King Road. 5:26 a.m., a vehicle matching the description of Vehicle 1 is seen traveling northbound on Johnson Avenue. Now that apparently is in Pullman, Washington. Interesting they spotted the vehicle in Pullman, but wouldn't provide visual evidence of where the fucking vehicle was coming from prior, traveling westbound on Indian Hills Drive. Funny, don't you think? I mean, think about it the way this is being depicted, where the vehicle was spotted traveling westbound on Indian Hills Drive around 3:26 a.m. It's almost as if get this, it just popped up on that road, captured on surveillance. Yep, the same thing that happened with Kanika Jenkins in surveillance. She just popped up on the conference floor. Now, obviously, she had previously gotten off the elevator, everyone witnessed it. Yet somehow the conference floor surveillance doesn't show her walking from the elevator onto that ramp. She pops up out of nowhere. In other words, tampered surveillance, which is edited surveillance, which is done to hide the truth. Seems a white vehicle traveling westbound on Indian Hills Drive wasn't spotted anywhere prior to that street. There is one vehicle that was spotted in surveillance, which was white and was speeding to boot. Isn't that odd? Yes, it is. It states that the vehicle was traveling south on Walenta Drive after departing the neighborhood. Well, where exactly is it going? Okay, well, there's a dead end continuing south onto Bora Avenue, so it couldn't have gone that direction. Alpawa Street is basically a residential street that ends at the intersection with Bora Avenue. Walenta also turns to a dead end. The only other path it could have taken leaving the neighborhood would be traveling east onto Ridge Road again. Yes, it would be spotted again. Now, since they haven't provided an actual point of reference leaving Moscow here, we have to attempt to fill in this blank spot again. Wait, just for clarity, let's go over it once more. As you see here, the vehicle leaves the neighborhood around 4:20 a.m., traveling south on Walenta Drive. Now, since there is no other path the vehicle can take exiting on Walenta Drive other than Ridge Road, why wasn't there another timestamp of spotting the vehicle on Ridge Road? Prior, Ridge Road was mentioned frequently, as the vehicle was reported to be spotted by a camera there. Yet when the vehicle is leaving, an hour gap in which the vehicle apparently wasn't spotted in Moscow again. It would have been spotted leaving by the same camera. Law enforcement claims it traveled back and forth into the neighborhood from, right? Yet the next timestamp is 5:26 a.m. in another state. How do you know it's the same vehicle if you're not linking its travel from a previous path in Moscow? Hold on, let me stay focused. Okay, there are several paths from the neighborhood, heading back to Pullman. For that matter, there are several paths to take from Pullman to the neighborhood. Exiting, you travel east on Ridge Road, then head south onto Sunnyside Avenue. That connects you to West Palouse River Drive heading west, and take that all the way to Sand Road, which seems to go forever, in our opinion. That's traveling in the direction south of Pullman, but nevertheless, you can cross state lines leaving the neighborhood. Then you have the Highway 95 traveling south, the west onto Snow Road, which crosses state lines. Or you can take the good old road trip, traveling south on Highway 95, crossing state lines on Thorn Creek Road, and hopping onto US 195 heading north back to Pullman. Now keep in mind, all of these routes back across state lines are traveling south. This is important to point out. Now the claim that the vehicle that matches description of the suspect's vehicle being spotted on Johnson Avenue in Pullman, there has to be a path that was tracked from Moscow, right? Here's the problem. The obvious path would be north, traveling on Highway 8 in Moscow, crossing state lines onto Highway 270 in Pullman. But if this was the path, where are all of the screenshots of the multiple traffic cameras heading west back to Pullman? The only so-called evidence the public has seen was from the neighborhood, and in the vicinity of the neighborhood. There hasn't been any evidence of the alleged Kohberger's white Elantra speeding down the highway, any highway. Yet it is reported that the vehicle was spotted leaving Moscow near a liquor store on Highway 8. Well, there is a camera there, right? We displayed it in our previous episode. Where is the footage of the vehicle leaving Moscow? What about the claim the vehicle was also spotted near, what was it? Oh yeah, Floyd's cannabis shop off of 270 in Pullman, not too far from the state line. None of this has been publicly revealed, yet this is the actual proof that Koberger's vehicle physically entered and departed Moscow via surveillance footage. Law enforcement reported that they obtained surveillance footage from both locations, and the vehicle was spotted leaving Moscow. In fact, this path can't be correct because the vehicle doesn't exit on Taylor Avenue, which connects to Nez Perce Drive. Taylor also connects with Highway 95, which merges with Highway 8, and then heading west reaches the state line. They claim the vehicle exits on Walenta Drive, and then there is no mention of where the hell it travels from that point on. Yet if you know what, I'm done.
It's okay, I'll try to finish. There is a claim, though, with specifics of the path Koberger would have taken upon departing. Quote, based on my knowledge of the area and review of camera footage in the neighborhood that does not show suspect vehicle 1 during that time frame, I believe that suspect vehicle 1 likely exited the neighborhood at Palouse River Drive and Conestoga Drive. Unquote. Okay, so first off, this is an assumption, with no surveillance footage to track a path with. Second, if the vehicle is departing traveling south, then which direction on Palouse Drive are they assuming the vehicle headed? Because if it's heading east, then onto Highway 95, this is stepping on landmines, which would be the traffic cameras heading north. If it's heading west, then you're conflicting with the claim the vehicle was spotted near the liquor store on Highway 8 and near Floyd's cannabis shop on 270, which is located at the northern region of the state line. So we have confusion as to which direction the vehicle departed, where exactly the vehicle was spotted departing before crossing state lines, and the only surveillance footage that has been provided is within the vicinity of the neighborhood. Now, without showing any of the traffic cameras on the highway, how can you link the vehicle's path traveling on those highways to the vehicle snooping around in the neighborhood? You can't. There needs to be a traffic cam that spots the vehicle on the highway. It's that simple. If the vehicle traveled north on Highway 95, then it would have been spotted approximately at 4:30-ish at the intersection of 95 and Highway 8. Here we go again. Here's a traffic cam on Troy Road, would have spotted the vehicle here. Here's another on Jackson Street. Here's another on Line Street. Here's another on Stadium Drive. And last, but the most important in the departure, is the traffic cam on Warbonate Drive, which is right before the vehicle crosses the state lines. If Koberger's white Hyundai Elantra was spotted by these cameras, leaving Moscow on this highway, we would have seen it already. So what do we conclude from this? Well, the vehicle spotted on White Avenue was the vehicle in the neighborhood. Between the footage of the alleged Hyundai Elantra snooping around in the area and the vehicle spotted on White Avenue at 3:45 a.m., it appears to be the same vehicle. And the determining factor in the analysis is, well, for one, the time it spotted was when the murders occurred. Second, it's a white sedan. Third, it's a white sedan speeding down the road. And fourth, the direction it's coming from is east, which is the same direction the suspect's vehicle was coming from traveling westbound on Indian Hills Drive. And this suspect's path does not have a connecting path from the east, in which the vehicle is traveling west from, you see. All of these factors justify our belief that this is the suspect's vehicle. Again, the report claims the suspect's vehicle was seen traveling westbound on Indian Hills Drive. There is no report of where it previously came from. This can't be overlooked. We will just keep reiterating this. The vehicle spotted on White Avenue is traveling westbound. The clerk claimed she didn't know which direction the vehicle headed. This was a lie, because there were screenshots of different cameras leaked out showing the intersection of White Avenue and Troy Road. No report on where the vehicle came from, coming from the intersection of White and Blaine Street, nor no report on where the vehicle actually traveled after exiting White Avenue. No report of where the suspect's vehicle was traveling from, east on Indian Hills. And logic suggests that the reason there are blank spots in the whereabouts of these two vehicles is, well, it's the same vehicle. Let's look at the path once more. As we see, based on the report, the suspect's vehicle was spotted traveling westbound on Indian Hills Drive, then westbound on Steiner Avenue. But the location in which the vehicle was spotted on Indian Hills has to come from the east. As you see, these are markers we placed in the area to show where the vehicle would have to be traveling from, which is the east. Without any information about where the suspect's vehicle was coming from, prior to traveling westbound on Indian Hills, there is no point of reference to derive from in its travel. Now, of course, we conclude it's the same white vehicle speeding down White Avenue, and we justify this theory by showing the lack of information for the suspect's vehicle prior to its westbound path on Indian Hills, you see. If we head back eastbound, there are two intersecting paths that connect with Indian Hills Drive. You have Blaine Street, of course, and Mountain View Road. The vehicle has to be coming from this direction because it's traveling westbound on Indian Hills. It's possible that it traveled from East Palouse River Drive and makes on left onto Indian Hills. But due to the white vehicle being spotted on White Avenue, that's just too much of a coincidence. Don't you guys think so? As far as the time, well, it's just not any real way to determine if anything is authentic.
Let's just cover as many angles as possible regarding this issue. As it stands, we assume it's the same vehicle. But the time is what needs to be really broken down. On one hand, it's highly possible that the time was edited an hour ahead, meaning every sighting of the vehicle in the neighborhood was actually in the 2 a.m. hour and then departs around 3:20 a.m. In this setting, the white vehicle speeding down White Avenue at 3:45 a.m. would be the same vehicle that had left the neighborhood around 3:20 a.m. This is possible. This is logical. This is highly likely due to the element of protecting suspects. Everyone has to keep in mind that the original estimated time of death was within the 3 a.m. hour, meaning the murders had already been committed within that 3 a.m. hour, not in the 4 a.m. hour, which was updated based on so-called activity from one of the victims. Also, the claim of seeing a white sedan all the way in Pullman around 5:30 a.m., yet without any connecting path from Moscow to Pullman. How did they track the vehicle departing Moscow? To even focus on surveillance in Pullman, you see? In the state's response to the defense motion in limine, they display the alleged path the vehicle took based on surveillance, as seen here. All of the colors are based on specific locations that the vehicle was spotted. If we focus on the right-hand side, the teal color is where the vehicle allegedly is traveling from, which would be, that's right, the eastern region. Now, all of these points of reference, yet there isn't a point of origin upon arrival into Moscow. How about this one, which shows the alleged path of the suspect's vehicle around 4 a.m.? It leaves the neighborhood, exiting on Valena Drive, onto Ridge Road, then apparently it turns around and heads back west on Ridge Road back to the neighborhood. The defense argued that there isn't continuous footage linking the vehicle at the crime scene, and the vehicle spotted traveling on Ridge Road. Now, the state argues that there doesn't need to be continuous footage for the evidence to be admissible. Well, yes and no. Let me explain. If the defense points out that there is no footage of the vehicle entering Moscow on surveillance, which would be tracked by various traffic cameras, and match the description of the same vehicle tracked by surveillance in the neighborhood, then yes, it does matter. Because this proves without a doubt, based on the path of origin linked to the neighborhood, that the suspect's vehicle is the alleged Koberger's. Yet if there is no evidence of this point of origin, then you don't have a point of reference entering nor departing the town of Moscow. So you would see a vehicle that matches the description of the suspect's vehicle, yet there are several white Hyundai Elantras, as everyone has researched relative to the case. On the other hand, the vehicle is being described as matching the vehicle of the suspect charged with the crime. And if the defense can't prove that it isn't their client's vehicle with some type of evidence that proves he was never in Moscow during the time of the murders, then no, it doesn't matter if there isn't continuous footage. Here's the problem. For the vehicle to be spotted near the liquor store on Highway 8, this means it would have to travel north. Not only travel north, but it would be lambasted by traffic cameras, which we have never seen. It was claimed that the vehicle exited on Valenta Drive, not Taylor Avenue, and for the vehicle to be spotted near that liquor store, exiting on Valenta Drive, well, even if it didn't exit on Taylor, the vehicle would still be lambasted by traffic cameras. Yet this is the conflicting information, because the reports claim the vehicle was spotted up north near that liquor store, but there hasn't been actual evidence provided via surveillance footage. Moscow PD visited that liquor store. They also visited Floyd's cannabis shop. Yet, nothing has been publicly released as evidence. Has anyone noticed that law enforcement has all of the timestamps the vehicle was spotted in the neighborhood, and even in the vicinity? I mean, look at all of this tracking of the suspect's vehicle within the vicinity of the crime scene, displaying the zipping around of the suspect's vehicle in and out of the neighborhood. Yet, you have to establish points of reference, such as spotting the white sedan traveling on Highway 95, then Highway 8, then crossing state lines, onto 270 in Pullman. That would justify tracking the white sedan all the way on Johnson Avenue in that town. Yet there hasn't been a connecting path to link to that avenue in that town. Here's what was claimed.
Quote, investigators were given access to video footage on the Washington State University campus, located in Pullman, Washington. A review of that video indicated that at approximately 2:44 am on November 13th, a white sedan, which was consistent with the description of the white Elantra known as Suspect Vehicle 1, was observed on WSU surveillance cameras, traveling north on Southeast Nevada Street at Northeast Stadium Way. At approximately 2:53 a.m., a white sedan, which is consistent with the description of the white Elantra known as Suspect Vehicle 1, was observed traveling southeast on Nevada Street in Pullman, Washington, towards State Route 270. State Route 270 connects Pullman, Washington to Moscow, Idaho. This camera footage from Pullman, Washington, was provided to the same FBI forensic examiner. The forensic examiner identified the vehicle observed in Pullman, Washington, as being a 2014 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. Unquote. Okay, before we break this down, let's visit this region in Pullman. As we see, the path the so-called FBI forensic examiner suggests Kohberger traveled, which would be around 2:53 a.m., turns east onto 270 and heads to Moscow. Yet, if this is the path, where is the surveillance footage displaying this departure from Pullman? And of course, where is the surveillance footage showing the white sedan entering Moscow from the North State Line? As we pointed out, there are several traffic cameras on Highway 8 near the state line. You have the traffic cam on Warbonnet Street and the traffic cam on Farm Road. Now, the interesting thing about the traffic cam on Farm Road, based on the quickest path to the neighborhood, is this would literally show the white sedan making a right onto Farm Road from Highway 8. Yet once again, no footage has shown this vehicle, nor has there been a report that the vehicle was spotted here neither. So regardless of what the so-called FBI forensic examiner spotted in Pullman, if you're not connecting that vehicle with any footage in Moscow, such as spotted by this traffic cam, you can't prove that vehicle is physically in Moscow. Now, of course, you have to keep in mind that a white Hyundai Elantra spotted driving around in Moscow, and even in the neighborhood, doesn't prove that it's the same vehicle they claim to have spotted in Pullman. Yes, I know they say it matches the description, but another white Hyundai Elantra would also match the description. And this is why the defense challenged the state to prove that it's one vehicle in all of the surveillance footage examined. Yet, let's think about the suspect's vehicle spotted traveling westbound on Indian Hills around 3:26 a.m. Yep, I guess we find out where the vehicle was traveling from, based on what the so-called FBI forensic examiner claimed. Okay, from Pullman, for the vehicle to be spotted traveling westbound on Indian Hills, then the path would have to go through every traffic cam on the highway, and then make a right onto Blaine Street, which intersects with Indian Hills Drive. Okay, this has to be the path of the vehicle based on the location and direction of travel from the vehicle on Indian Hills. Yet, what would be the reason for this drawn-out path to the target's home when they could just turn on Farm Road from Highway 8? Not only is it a longer path, but it also makes the vehicle more visible by traffic cameras, and even residential cameras, right? On Farm Road, you can, quote, slip into the neighborhood without being spotted by multiple cameras. Now, the estimated time from Nevada Street in Pullman to the neighborhood is about 30 minutes. Now, leaving at 2:55 a.m., this places the vehicle in the neighborhood close to 3:30 a.m. But again, no footage from any of the traffic cams entering Moscow, no traffic cams traveling southbound on Highway 95, then Highway 8. Where's the evidence? Yet Blaine Street. Now that's interesting. In this alleged path, which would have to be the path traveling to the neighborhood, by the way, this alleged path involves a street, which is where another vehicle, a white sedan, spotted at 3:45 a.m., had to also travel through, heading westbound. Yep, that would be the white sedan speeding down White Avenue, which was captured by surveillance, which the public has seen. Think about it. This vehicle seems to align with traveling in the vicinity of highways, which could be seen as evidence of the suspect's vehicle entering Moscow, right? Of course, it's traveling from the opposite direction of the alleged entrance into Moscow, but this is the only vehicle, which is a white sedan, that has been seen traveling near the highway and speeding on top of that. Let's make sure we're all understanding here. Here's the alleged path that the so-called FBI forensic examiner would project. Again, they didn't extend the path this far. They state that the vehicle was spotted heading towards State Route 270. They don't clarify that the vehicle was physically seen traveling eastbound on 270. They state it was heading towards the highway. And the reason for this vague examination is because it would have to travel on this specific path based on the report the vehicle was spotted traveling westbound on Indian Hills. Does everyone understand? Okay, now let's just reverse the path, adding White Avenue into the mix. Yep, this creates a path for that white sedan speeding on White Avenue at 3:45 a.m. Again, there is no official report of where the vehicle was coming from, where the vehicle was going, who was driving the vehicle, yet it was ruled out. How can the vehicle be ruled out as a suspect if there is no information about the vehicle and its activities that night? This is insanity, right? Well, as we believe, which is logical based on the element of there being a frame, this is the same vehicle spotted in the neighborhood. And the vehicle spotted on Indian Hills Drive traveling westbound at 3:26 a.m. is actually traveling eastbound at 3:26 a.m. The old switcheroonie, right? All they did was reverse the path of the vehicle, because if it was reported to be traveling eastbound on Indian Hills Drive, then it's the same vehicle spotted on White Avenue. It's not even a question. Phew, I'm exhausted, but this is extremely important.
Great analysis. They're slick but not slick enough. Need more WD-40. The old switcheroonie? Yep, great strategy to throw everyone off. But as we know, truth cannot be held back. I would even suggest that the suspect vehicle return to the neighborhood from White Avenue, heads straight down Steiner Avenue, then sneaks back on the side streets such as Ridge Road, arriving around that 3:50 a.m. time frame. Approximately 7 minutes travel time, this places the vehicle in the neighborhood around 3:52 a.m. But let's make sure everyone stays on point. In our analysis, every timestamp in the updated time of death, which would have the vehicle arriving around 3:30 a.m., would actually be an hour prior, about 2:30 a.m. The audio of the female heard shouting by the neighbor's security camera, the loud slamming noise, barking, all happened around 3:17 a.m. Then everything comes to a screeching silence at 3:47 a.m. Murders concluded roughly around 3:30 a.m. A white sedan is spotted speeding down White Avenue at 3:45 a.m. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that this vehicle is either speeding away from the scene of the crime, or get this, is coming back to the scene of the crime. All you do is take the same alleged lurking in the neighborhood of Coburger, in the time frame of 3:30 a.m. to around 4:10 a.m., and simply pull the hour back, and place the white sedan on White Avenue there, doing the same thing from 2:30 a.m. to around 3:10 a.m. Kaylee and Madison are texting Jack from 2:30 a.m. to approximately 3 a.m., then no more. Individuals were seen running away from the neighborhood around 3:15 a.m. Then the attacks unfolded, female shouts, loud slamming noises, Murphy is barking, and that was all she wrote. Keep in mind, in the updated time of death to the 3 a.m. hour, that female heard shouting at 3:17 a.m. would be 2 minutes after those individuals were spotted running away from the neighborhood, back to their fraternities. Context clues here suggest they knew the attacks were about to go down and may have even been involved. Again, so this is clear. The so-called FBI forensic examiner didn't confirm, suggest that the vehicle traveled on State Route 270, heading to Moscow. This is the alleged path upon arrival. Yet Moscow PD provided their own path of arrival, which was traveling south on US 195, crossing some state lines onto Highway 95, then heading north. In that path, as we pointed out, the vehicle would have to turn right onto Southview Avenue, then Alice Street, then Indian Hills Drive, to be spotted on the camera there at 3:26 a.m. Now, how do they not have the actual point of entrance and path when there are tons of traffic cameras and even business cameras all throughout the town? If Moscow PD was providing a path of departure instead of arrival, it still contradicts the claim of spotting the vehicle up north on Highway 8, near the liquor store, you see? When it comes to the arrival and departure, they seem to be guessing which path was taken, yet there are traffic cams on both ends of the highways. In other words, the vehicle would be spotted travelling on either direction, south or north, departing. If it was the southern region, the vehicle would be spotted at the intersection of Highway 95 and Palouse River Drive. Coincidentally, there is a police department a few blocks north of that intersection. If it was up and running during the time of the murders, there is absolutely no question Moscow PD has obtained that traffic cam footage. If it was the northern region, then before it even gets on the straightaway, it would be bombarded with traffic cams all the way to Highway 8. And then you have those traffic cams also, as it would be seen by every camera departing Moscow. Yet for some odd reason, they don't seem to know exactly where the vehicle was when it comes to arrival points and departure points. I mean, really, it's a freaking light bulb speeding down the roads. It sticks out like a sore thumb in surveillance footage. But apparently the light bulb was never spotted on any of those traffic cameras. Wow. Oh, but they have all of the surveillance in the neighborhood and the vicinity, specific times and specific paths. That's the easiest part of tracking the vehicle. But the most important part, in our eyes, and even from the defense, is where is the footage linking the defendant's vehicle to the neighborhood from his point of origin? Without this proof, the suggestion that Koberger traveled on 270 heading east, crossing state lines into Moscow, is speculation. There is no physical proof to back the claim. And going even further, no physical proof of the vehicle being spotted in Moscow after crossing state lines by traffic cams on Warbonate Street, the first traffic cam after crossing state lines, and then the following traffic cams heading into town. How can you link the alleged suspect's vehicle, claimed to be the vehicle in the neighbourhood, to the same white sedan spotted in Pullman without proving its previous points upon arrival? If a killer crosses state lines to commit the killings, and crosses state lines leaving, you would tend to think it's a major priority to track down that vehicle near those state lines, right? This is silly. Well, might not be that big of a deal if that vehicle never crossed state lines in the first place. The vehicle spotted on Taylor Avenue around 2:58 a.m., well, it could be a white Hyundai Elantra. It could also be the white sedan on White Avenue. Heck, the calls stopped at 2:52 a.m., and a vehicle that appears to be a white sedan is spotted at 2:58 a.m. is driving down Taylor Avenue. There are only two paths to take heading west on Taylor Avenue. Either entering the neighbourhood, which would be spotted by the neighbour's security camera, or travelling on Walenta Drive, which is where law enforcement claim the suspect's vehicle frequently travelled on. I have an inkling that this is the same vehicle speeding down White Avenue. Its presence could be when the attacks were about to take place. Interesting tidbit we found. We assumed that Bonnie resided on Ridge Road. This was early on in our investigation. I believe someone pointed that out. Honestly, we never actually dug this up because we are not in the business of doxing. But let's go back to the map for a moment. Okay, we have an address up north on Lund Lane. Based on public records, a female named Emma M. Bailey resides here. This female is in her 20s and stays with an individual named Paul Bailey. There is a female who is named Kimberly Bailey who stays on Gamble's Lane, further north. Now it is highly likely that this would be Bonnie and her relatives. But there is a previous address, which is where there may have been a bit of confusion near the victim's home. The previous address was on Shetland Court, which is near Ridge Road. Now, if this is in fact Bonnie and her previous address, this places her 4 minutes from the home, and it would also include the very street that Moscow PD assumed the suspect's vehicle departed on, which would be Conestoga Drive. I think we may have put another piece back on the puzzle board. Ah, yes, it's all coming together now. Bonnie is the driver behind the wheel of our white sedan on White Avenue. Yep. Leaves the neighbourhood around 3:20 a.m., makes a stop at a residence on Shetland, heads east to Steiner, eastbound on Indian Hills, heads north on South Blaine Street. And here's where we connect the final dot. Bonnie heads to her relatives' homes up north. Ah, yes. The trajectory of the vehicle spotted on White Avenue aligns with those locations. The vehicle spotted on White Avenue at 3:45 a.m. makes a right on Troy Road and heads north on Highway 8. And you end up at 371 Gamble's Lane, a relative of Bonnie, and more than likely heads east to 694 Lund Lane, which is another relative's address. This is our theory, of course. The vehicle was never cleared. It was ruled out, though. You can't rule it out if you never cleared it. But if it's the same vehicle zipping around in the neighbourhood, that proves Koberger's vehicle wasn't there. Well, of course you'll rule it out. We'll leave it there for now. Would like to get everyone's insight on our analysis. Until next time, this is the Chaos Sector.